Cool. So welcome everyone again. This is the GUAC maintenance meeting. It happens weekly. Participation in this meeting is following the LF antitrust policies as well as the Open SSF Code of Conduct. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available online. We have quite a group today, and I think some new faces. So anyone that's coming back from in a while, or anyone that's new want to kind of drop a quick intro. Mario, go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Mario. I am working for Cybermatic, but the reason why I am here is we are also doing I'm doing some work for CNCF, and I'm currently using GUAC to spin up a CNCF-wide installation, so that basically all of the CNCF projects get basically ingested in one GUAC installation. And the goal is to make this also publicly available, the data, so that basically every company and everyone can use this as a point of truth for I use XYZ CNCF project. What is my SBOM? What are things that I need to discover or stuff like this, especially in with the eyes towards the European regulation of the Cyber Resilience Act, where vendors need to show what open source projects do they use and how stable those are. And also we want to ensure that we don't run into any licensing issues there, or that not licensing issues, but that people can say like, is there any licensing problem if we use this project and stuff like this. So that's the reason why I'm here.
That's super awesome. Yeah, and I think do feel free to ask us anything if things don't look right, or like maybe if things could be done better, also let us know. Yeah, and I think at some point, whenever you have something, I think we'll be excited to see a demo of that as well.
Yeah, I will let you know. And already, I want to say thank you for the really, really quick response last week when I struggled with the GitHub ingester.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Alistair?
no. Oh, I was just gonna say, no problem. It turns out I had written it like I think 2 years ago, and most folks there, like, we were thinking more folks would be pushing their SBOMs to GitHub releases, but very few folks actually did. But we're seeing more and more CNCF projects start to do that, so we're hoping that yeah, so there was a couple of bugs because of things that were like, oh, we had just never really used it since then. But thanks, you pointed out some cool stuff there to look at. Sorry, Alistair.
Sure. Cool. Right, so I've been missing for a while. My name's Alistair. I'm a database specialist. I have a particular interest in trying to make open source projects work better with Postgres. My manager at Bacona pointed me at GUAC as something that was having some database difficulties. So yeah, I'm here to try to get involved in that and make it all better.
Awesome. Good to see you again, Alistair. Cool. Anybody else want to say something, Matt?
Yeah, I haven't been for a while. A long time fan. I put something in the agenda related to what. Also, I'm from the CNCF as well, and I put an issue in around using GUAC for CNCF projects as a new initiative under the new tag reboot stuff. So.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for adding the agenda items and to those that are new. So the agenda is a free form. So if something comes to mind, please add it to the list. All right. So let's get started. So I think the first couple are from Ben. One is about permissions for triage on the new Hum charts repo that was moved over. I think all we need here is just a general agreement on providing the permissions.
Yeah, and I added a note on there as well that I think for triage level access, it probably makes sense to just create a team in the GitHub org and assign that team triage access across all repos. There's not a lot of damage that can be done with that, and we can always kick somebody out if they're doing the wrong thing. But it doesn't. I don't see a lot of value in handling, on a per repo basis. If we trust someone to triage tickets, let's just let them have it.
And would that be kind of anyone that has reviewer bit on anything?
I would say, yeah, it makes sense. If you get reviewer, you're automatically in triage. And we talked to, gosh, it's been almost a year now. We, talked about some edits to the contributor ladder when we added the web and docs areas. I think I had originally proposed including triage as well. And the general consensus was we don't really need that, I guess, part of the ladder formally. It's just, if somebody has, shown some competence in participating in the community, and that, whether or not it's based on commits or if they've just, been showing up answering questions, or we know them to be, reasonably sound-minded when it comes to doing things like that, we can just, grant triage access to help them, so they can make, their contribution can be tagging issues and, reopening or closing issues as needed. So we kind of agreed at that point to keep it pretty informal.
Do you have agreement on the proposal? Yeah. Okay. Let's see. But basically, all the maintenance comes up, and I can take point on creating the group and updating the contributor ladder. Then you had another one on governance.
Yeah, I just opened this like within the past hour, but just requesting access, lowest level of write access to the governance repo, just so that way once the notes, PRs, or things like that are approved, I can merge them myself if they don't get merged on review. Sometimes we'll end up with a backlog of 5 or 6 weeks worth of stuff, and as long as we require review, at least one reviewer on pull requests, I don't know that I could really cause much damage with that. So
I'm kind of wondering whether I'm trying to see what else is in the governance repo. I think it's mainly just the charter. I think on a day-to-day basis, I think that sounds good. I think the only thing that I'm worried about is, let's say, like one of our accounts get pwned, and someone updates the governance to whatever they want, then that may be a bad case. But I think that's not something that, like, even if it happens, we can come up and say like, oh, we had a security incident, and it's not like someone's gonna take this and abuse the power and like bring it up to the open SSF, and they'll spell something funny anyway. Yeah, I'm good with this. Any other input on?
I'm also +1 on this. I know I've been reviewing PRs there and then letting them stale, not merged, and then either Mike or Ben would come and say like these are need to be merged in order. So
Any other thoughts? I take no response as agreement. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Since I'm doing other permission stuff, I can tag this on. So, okay, so next one's on GUAC 1.0. Ben, do you wanna chat through that?
Yes, if I can only click the audio button one time. So the Helm charts are moved into the GUACSec org now. I know we talked about wanting to have Postgres support as a necessary requirement for 1.0. I am not in any way a Helm expert, but it looks like there's already references to it there. So if somebody can confirm that, then we can consider that item done already. The other thing is I, over the weekend, put together a draft OpenSSF blog post. I had shared sort of our messaging framework with the OpenSSF blog team, and they have a technical review committee that kind of provides some feedback on blog post ideas. And so honestly, the blog post is very sort of marketing-y because that was kind of the feedback we got. I think that's fine. As I noted below, we'll want to do a post in advance on the GUAC blog that, has a little more of like here are the things that we are considering stable, everything else is experimental, a little more of the technical nitty gritty. And the OpenSSF blog can be more about the why GUAC, why it's awesome, hooray 1.0 kind of stuff. So we don't need to go through that draft on this call, but if we can have it, have comments and edits by like maybe the end of the day, Wednesday, I can share it with the OpenSSF blog team again and see what they have to say about it now that it's in an actual draft form. The only other thing to consider is like, I don't know whose names we want to put on it. Because or if we want to try and see, have it to say GUAC maintainers, but I think OpenSSF typically likes having individual names on it on blog posts. So we'll kind of want to figure like who do we want to have billing on that, as it were.
I mean, I would definitely prefer if it just said like Ben and GUAC maintainers, if possible. And I could talk to the OpenSSF if that's not possible. I would like it to just be clear, like, oh, Ben wrote the blog, and the GUAC maintainers were obviously like, this wouldn't be possible without the GUAC maintainers, but like we don't necessarily need to call out everybody individually, I think.
Yeah. The other thing we could do too is, and like this becomes a little more of a political question, is, do we have somebody from Kusari and, somebody from Google, and then maybe Santiago to represent Purdue, so like the founding organizations that created GUAC initially. One, I know LF blogs in general tend to prefer, they like to show, multiple multiple companies or organizations on blog posts like that always, or in conference talks too, like that just kind of helps, politically. And like, I am 100% fine with not receiving, a byline. Like I've got no ego attached to this post. So if we feel like, if there's some political value in having it be a, Parth and Brandon and Santiago, or, whatever combination of people, that's cool with me.
I think yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm overly indexed on the 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 angle, at least from blog posts. Is this something that the OpenSSF has gave feedback on, or is this kind of like your thinking that it would be helpful?
I don't know that they've not said anything to me, specifically about that. It's just a thing that, from experience, I know is a general preference. So when I send the draft over to Sally and the rest of the team, I can ask them, because, for some of it is like, will it benefit OpenSSF to have, those, to have like the multiple company thing, and, or do they just not care?
You guys saw a few comments in the chat that Pop should definitely be on the, given he wrote most of the 1.0 related things.
Maybe I can give a perspective from the Kubernetes project, how we do it there. It's basically, we have always people who are named as a person, but usually what is trying to be done is that we exactly do this. So we basically select, like, we have 3 people from Google, DigitalOcean, or Microsoft, and then they work like on the blog post. And the first blog post on the first line in the blog post is then on behalf of the XYZ or of the Kubernetes project. We are pleased to announce that, and then the blog post goes on. So this is something that we do at Kubernetes level.
All right, thanks, Mario. Yeah, I think that's helpful. I think the outcome for that is that no one's objecting to any of the ones that you proposed, Ben. I don't think I haven't heard strong opinions on either way. So I think it ends up being what's best, and I think everyone's. I think we'll trust your judgment on that.
Okay.
With the one aspect that maybe have a chat with Pop and see what he thinks.
Alrighty,
Yeah.
can do.
Especially since he did a lot of work for that.
And then the only other sort of question is, assuming the Helm chart does actually have the Postgres support already, I think that's basically everything. I think ideally, I know we'll want to have a GUAC blog post and actually cut the release at least a couple of days in advance of the OpenSSF blog post, just so they can link back to it and, we'll actually do it. I don't know that it really hurts us too much to have like a couple of weeks potentially between them. But I think if we can keep it within a couple of days of each other, that's probably best. So when I send the draft to Sally, I can ask about, sort of a work back plan in terms of when we need to do it. But I just wanted to make sure that there's nothing else from our side. The other thing too is we're having our rescheduled community call a week from Thursday. So on June 12th, is that right? Yes, June 12th. So it'd be really awesome for us to have it by then and, have some virtual cupcakes or something.
Only guac and chips. Awesome. So I think the follow-up from this is we should identify which comment we want to use for the release and then have that in the back pocket so that we can just push it through. Right.
And even though the GitHub collector isn't stable in terms of what we're calling 1.0, I think we should probably make sure we, that fix is included in whatever commit we select, just so that way it's, in the 1.0 binaries with that fix. I don't know that there's really been much else that's changed since the 0.14 release, but it would be good to have at least that bug fix in there, I think.
Okay. I'm gonna tag Path on this. He'll probably be the best person to. Santiago has a candidate. Santiago, can you put the candidate in the meeting notes?
No, I was joking. That's the no comment. Let's not use that one.
Cool. All right. Ben, is there anything else that we didn't address yet for the GUAC 1.0?
Not unless somebody else has thought of something that I haven't.
You said you would want the 1.0 blog, like more technical blog posts. Is that something that you're hoping that we can write, or do you have something already there for that?
I don't have anything written, but I could probably, having written the OpenSSF blog post and, since we put together that sort of messaging and fact sheet, it would be very quick for me to draft something up and then we could circulate that. So I can do that later this week.
Okay, sounds good. Cool. Otherwise, Matt, you have updates.
Hello. My name is Matt. As some of you may know, in the CNCF, there's been a big tag rework, and so it looks like Scaled Agile to me, or Organized Engineering, or some other moniker. But I've made an initiative because I think it's something that, as table stakes, an open source foundation should provide for its projects, which is facilities to understand security posture and be able to look at, across the ecosystem of now 200 plus projects in the CNCF, what are trends? It's not just about threats and vulnerabilities, but it's also about comprehending the composition of our projects. What things are used by more projects than others, and all of the other answers that GUAC can do. So Mario's here. He's on the infra side, run ahead of me, but I've been, I just said, okay, great, we can make initiatives. Let's make one. Let's make this one. So I've linked it there. So I have a lot of questions that might not make sense for this meeting, but I would want to just say, we want to stand up a GUAC instance that can handle the next 10 years of the CNCF. That's the marketing terms, right? It's 10 years old. Now we're pivoting to, what happens when we have 400 projects 3 years from now, or something like that, right? So have there been any case studies or analysis done as the first question on scalability, and that might get into selection of different backends and graph databases. And if not, it might I would propose that we use our experience in implementing this in the CNCF as a case study for you to collaborate on. But that would be my first sort of question, and I'll pause there.
Yeah, so I could say that, like, at Kusari, we've done a bunch with it internally. I think the thing that we've, like, if there's one thing we've sort of discovered is, one is we didn't need a graph database. Like
Mhm.
relational databases can actually handle what we're trying to do, because in general, we're not seeing hyper complicated graph queries. You know, generally, you know, most folks are not kind of asking complicated graph queries. And in fact, the sorts of queries that folks are asking for are fairly simple graph queries. So that's one thing. The other thing also is like when it comes to a lot of this, like we're not, you know, this is not an e-commerce site, right? Where we need like immediate transactions and blah, blah, and, you know,
Yeah, we
like,
can
oh,
batch
okay,
stuff
you know,
and
yeah,
like,
yeah. So it's like we could batch, you know, yada, yada. So when it comes to a lot of that, like, so first off, like the only backend we support is Postgres right now.
Okay, so the
And
project is aligned to that. I've been away for a little bit, but that's
yeah.
right.
We found that almost all the graph databases performed more poorly than just Postgres. But again, we're not doing something so hyper complicated with graphs
Yeah, I
that
mean, this
like,
sounds like more like scorecard type reporting, you know, straightforward queries and things like that over large tables. I'm curious. So that's interesting that no one has yet wanted to do like community detection or more like, you know, what's the topological structure of the transitive dependencies. Like that's what I thought everyone would just go to. So when you get into those kinds of queries, would you expect you know, a different story or
oh, pardon me. I'll just say I don't think so. Like I really don't think we've hit
yeah,
anything that
cool.
is, yeah.
Okay.
But I'll let Alistair, because Alistair is like
Also, the size of
Postgres
these
and
graphs, we're
database
not like
expert.
talking about, you know, hundreds of millions of nodes and kind of like biological life science type data sets that are stored here as well. So yeah, this is actually great news. So some of my anxiety about, you know, can we actually do this in 6 to 9 months goes away. Um, or at least is partially ameliorated, but there are hands up, so I'm going to mute myself. I'm all excited.
Yeah, cool. So frankly, just if you are having any performance problems trying to do this on Postgres, I'm happy to try to help you make it faster. At the moment, the initial idea that the graph was required does produce quite a big database. The abstraction framework for dealing with graph data does get quite verbose. But yeah, happy to help you sort that out from a performance point of view if you do get a third of the way and suddenly it's running through custody.
Yeah, is there anything even, thank you for that. And I'll probably take you up, or we'll probably take you up, whoever else is working on this as well. Um, um, do you have any kind of even informal sizing guidance from the project? Like, we're going to ingest this many hundreds of S-bombs. You know, what should we expect in the storage side, or is it sort of just an experiment and see?
I don't, sorry.
Okay.
So,
I would
go
say
ahead.
that we have done actual like community detection and like centrality, like K-core style work on the graph itself. But I think it's one of those cases of like, you either want a very lightweight sort of like a basic needs query that I think that's what most people are asking for, and I think that's what Michael is referring to. But that doesn't preclude the ability of, for example, having a background thread that's clustering data and sort of like lifting it into graph representation and doing more sort of like a community structural queries that we have played with that I think will be actionable in terms of identifying critical dependencies and things that may be also more within the sort of like purview or interest of a large-scale deployment within the OpenSSF to, for example, improve the health of the community and the ecosystem. But I think that's a little bit of a ongoing work that that should be possible with GUAC, but not necessarily what I assume Michael is, or like people with private deployments are running into right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just to kind of throw a high level thing out there. The bottleneck on GUAC has more to do with the external dependency, like the external services it integrates with, like clearly defined and OSV. Like clearly defined in OSV can take minutes, depending on how many obviously SBOMs you have, but like in the case of like a few gigabytes of SBOMs, it could be 30 minutes or an hour to get all the responses back from those external services. Whereas
Sure.
just integrate, whereas just parsing and ingesting those things, you know, it's on the order of a few seconds, like, you know,
Right.
maybe less than a
Yeah.
minute, you know, so in those sorts of cases, I think, and then also running then queries against that is like, again, on the order of, you know, maybe seconds at the most to kind of get responses back. So what we've seen again, time and again, is like the majority of the issues we're seeing are more along the lines of like these other external services just take a really long time to kind of come back. And what can we be doing to cache
Yeah.
that or otherwise
Exactly.
be like,
Like,
hey, you know,
can
do we
could
have
even
this?
make optional parts of the Helm chart. So sorry not to talk
Yeah.
over you, but there seems like there's some low hanging fruit there. Mario's got his hand
Yep.
up.
Yeah, so basically then, so an option, so if you, for example, I say like, hey, I want to, or I will ingest the data that I get out of Sift every once a week for each of the projects, then maybe it would be nice that it's not querying everything again. We have it like, oh, we already have this information, so we don't need to retrieve it again. So this would be like more of the thing where it would be great to optimize in the future, right? So as far as I understand it.
Call me out on this, but my understanding is some degree of that is already done. But for example, in the case that you spoke about, like, oh, all of this data from Sift, you don't know if a Sift scan is going to change, or there's like new CVEs that have like interesting consequences, or like something has been, say, a CVE didn't have a fixed commit by the time you fetched it, but now that you're gonna run again, there's actually a commit on the fix, like you have a version number that closes things out. And we have discussed some of this for sort of like better, more efficient handling. It's a little bit tricky for some data that's effectively non-monotonic. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, so we do a lot of that. And Jeff, I think you probably know better than I do, but I believe if we do the recertification, like we still do recertification, and that might update things. So generally the vulnerabilities and license stuff will not change. But we still do a recertification because in certain contexts, you can have, as an example, this vulnerability was actually revoked. You know, like, hey, it got into OSV, but after further inspection, turns out, nope, not an issue. Like, it's actually not a real vulnerability. But I would say those sorts of things are relatively few and far between. But we still do sort of recertification. But that, again, that, like, I think that's okay to say, yes, there's a vulnerability, but in the background over a half hour or an hour or whatever, it's going back through all the list of pearls and sort of saying, go back out, to OSV, look up to see if something is if something's vulnerable, and if something new comes in and it replaces it, you'll eventually get it where, if you ran the query today, it might be slightly different tomorrow. But again, I think that's pretty reasonable for most folks. They don't necessarily need the up to the second, like, hey, is this vulnerable or not vulnerable?
Yeah, but I think at least now we have, because we have it on ingestion time as well, there will be at least one data point once you ingest it.
Yeah, I was just going to say minimally, I think this approach gives organizations a familiar knob, right? What's the latency before I get another, and many organizations are not running on a down to the minute. A CVE was just posted, many organizations, as you must know from Kasari's work, and just anyone who's worked in a real company, the security function is going to be fine with something even as short as a week. So
Cool. Any other thoughts around this? If not, let's move on. The last item, I think we're just checking in with the Trustify process.
Yeah, what I meant by
how's that going?
so
Sorry?
I'm sorry, I couldn't find my mute button fast enough. On the last bit around conformance testing, is there any collateral, or if not, is the project open to it being contributed if developed around, like, once you've got a GUAC installation up and running, like what are some like full scale integration tests or conformance tests? I asked because there's an initiative that's not yet formally been proposed, but was talked about in London with some interest around establishing something of a facility, or a set of templates or libraries or something for CNCF projects that want to have a conformance suite but don't know where to start, and we don't want 200 different approaches to how do we do this. So minimally, using GUAC as a case study to inform that would be useful, but it got me thinking, we're going to go stand this up, or, Mario's already got some stuff stood up, and start scaling it up, right? So, is there any kind of tire kicking automation that we should be aware of?
So, I mean, there's definitely some tests here and there, but nothing at like the scale you might be thinking about. And again, like definitely, interested in, like we would definitely not turn down any of what you just said. So,
Well,
if
yeah,
there are things, yeah.
a lot of the dialogue was around, like, if I want to adopt a CNCF project or GUAC or whatever, if I want to adopt something and I'm at a company, I have a limited amount, probably, of political capital for like how much I can spend on an experiment. And that varies based on segment and team and all that. But so minimally, it's like the initiative wants to do two things: provide something for adopters or experimenters so that they can set expectations with their teams, about what to expect, and not like look at it and like get ready to kill it, if it spikes. And then the other bits around how the projects themselves can integrate with it. So there's sort of an unmet need for that, and I suspect the same might be here. So it'd be cool to keep talking.
Yeah, definitely. Because again, there are definitely some tests there, but not to the conformance level that I think you're speaking to. But there's definitely like integration tests and various other like sorts of things. And we have, for example, we do have a set of we do have a repo called GUAC data with just a set of SBOMs that we use to often essentially, hey, we ingest these SBOMs. If we start to see significant if we see a significant difference in performance or whatever, it helps us understand hey, something has gone severely wrong because all of a sudden the SBOMs from GUAC data aren't ingesting right or whatever. We use a lot of that as well. Yeah.
Great, thanks. I'm sure I'll circle back in future meetings. I wanted to bring up open telemetry and observability for GUAC and all of that and what's the current state, but I want to do a little homework first. So
yeah, we'd love to have better OTel sort of stuff inside of some of the stuff in GUAC as well. And then I know you and I had sort of talked as well that a few of us GUAC is becoming more than just purely that one project, as Gayon from Red Hat has talked about. There's Trustify/Trustification, which is joining GUAC as part of that, and then there might also be another sort of tool as well to try and essentially become a suite of tools around supply chain analysis, depending on what you kind of need. And they're all going to be interconnected, where they should all be sharing a similar ontology or data model, whatever you kind of want to call it. And so that, as an example, you might say, yes, we want a transactional model in this for these sorts of use cases, versus this is more of an analytical model there as well. And yeah, as Jeff just sort of mentioned, we do have OTel in there, but I think that there's probably a lot more we could probably add in as well.
Yeah, I think profiling too could be a nice addition. You could even envision, something that could be part of that packet or those resources given to experimenters or early adopters that, if there is a problem, a workflow to kick off profiling it and reproducing it and sending feedback back, or at least preparing a markdown file to be sent back or something like that.
So, all right. So going back to the last one, sorry, they impacted the Trustify, and the process, the donation process. How's that going?
There's nothing new on my side. As far as you know, we are waiting for the OpenSSF legal, right? To give us a green light to start working on it, right?
Yeah. I haven't heard anything from them. I know I think it's been 2 or 3 weeks now. So if we want, I can just kind of check in, like, hey, need anything from us? I'm guessing it's just a matter of LF legal needs for it to rise up in their stack. But I don't think there's any harm in just checking in with the project manager and saying, hey, where are we at? Do you need anything from us? So I can do that this week.
Awesome. I know since we were talking about Trustify and some of the different use cases, this call, they wanted to kind of like give a little spiel about the project, and maybe Matt, Mario, and folks will have some interest.
Yeah, so I don't have right picture in mind how to position it, right? But that's something we need to work on. So basically, it's a similar idea. We started with GUAC in the early days, but diverged somewhat throughout our journey. But the idea is similar to create a software that can manage SBOMs and all the related metadata towards it. So we took a couple of different approaches. So we early on committed to the Postgres, which is now also what GUAC is doing. But instead of going to more like a graph-oriented schema, it's more oriented towards more relational databases and gathering a little bit more metadata, focusing less on relationships, but more on something like searching and things that we didn't had in GUAC in the past, right? So full text search, giving more thoughts about getting all the data about vulnerabilities and advisories related to different packages. We also focus more on the UI and the REST API. So that's why we are trying to join forces because there's a lot of overlap between what we were doing and we were contributing to GUAC up to a point. So we are trying to find, as Mike said, like one home to all these efforts, and then work in the future to bring them closer together, that we can share the common code, common ontologies, data, everything, right? We are basically trying to do the same thing, but coming from the two different ends of the problem. I hope this wasn't too confusing because I need to prepare better to talk about this. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I put a link to the project as well in the meeting notes. If you want to check it out.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other topics that folks want to bring out? I think sorry.
I was just gonna say, yeah. Maybe sometime over the next few weeks. I know, Matt, you had talked about data fusion a little bit. I've been playing around with data fusion for also some GUAC related things, because again, I think there's the thing I think we were sort of surprised by was like, hey, for pure analytics purposes, like, hey, if I have 10,000 SBOMs, just taking those 10,000 SBOMs and using something like data fusion on top is actually pretty simple. And so we were kind of like looking at, what other options can folks have for when they want to, let's say, I want to do this analysis on my local laptop. I don't want to run a full-fledged GUAC right this second, or a full-fledged trustification, because like, hey, spinning up Postgres and spinning up some of these other things takes a while. Whereas some of the Apache stuff, if you use like data fusion or whatever, you could I can run it locally on my laptop, single binary, run a scan and say, hey, get me the list of, what's the most used package. And it's very simple to kind of get going. But again, none of us are experts in that sort of thing. And, you've done a lot of research there. So might want
to your point, so when I was at Apple, we were looking at using GUAC, and we stood it up, and the scale of Apple, or Apple's a sort of maybe an edge case in scale, but not really. I initially stood up GUAC because I wanted that raw analytics capability, and I didn't need all of the other stuff. And I ran into something similar when processing the GitHub archive, which is around 1 trillion records since 2015. But it looks a lot like SBOMs. They're deeply nested, very large JSON lines files, millions of events an hour kind of thing. But but at its core, it's the same thing. I have this big bunch of data shaped this way, and you've got the normal normalization, denormalization stuff, as well as JSON decoding, which is its own set of pain. And so I found the Apache Arrow ecosystem and data fusion and some of the other stuff, particularly for Postgres. One of the things I've got a working experiment of in the Landscape Graph project is using the Postgres Apache Flight SQL drivers for. So these are columnar drivers versus ODBC style standard drivers, which are row based. So when shoveling around SBOM data or GitHub archive data or whatever that's shaped like this, it's dramatically faster just for ingestion to get stuff into a table in Postgres from which you can do whatever you're going to do. So I found both Parquet and that whole PyArrow ecosystem set of libraries extremely useful, as well as like iJSON, and things like that, so that you don't have to decode full blobs to shuffle and sort hats. So if anyone wants like working examples of code or something like that, I've got a bunch of Jupyter notebooks that are in the Landscape Graph project. The domain is like getting ready for KubeCon, so we can look at all the issues and PRs, but it's not different from looking at SBOM or Cyclone data or whatever. So yeah, I think there's a lot of promise there, and particularly with data fusion. Lastly, like if you want to start building query engines and other things, and you want blisteringly fast performance as well as the security benefits of Rust, that whole ecosystem is really thriving. The last thing I'll say, and I posted about it just last week because I tripped over it. If anyone's been following in OpenTelemetry, there's the OpenTelemetry line protocol. It's the multiplexed logs, traces, metrics, profiles on the wire protocol that works over gRPC for routing telemetry data. There's been F5 drove this over the last year, integrating with the Apache Arrow libraries, not just as a consumer, but actually integrating some of the protocol stack, some of the data handling has been integrated directly into the protocol stack in the OpenTelemetry case, so that they could be smart about not resending dictionaries over and over, and dealing with some of the semantics that we were talking about. Incidentally, it occurs to me, with like a non-monotonic data that's just always coming in, and how do we handle it? Phase 2 of that is they've just contributed to the OpenTelemetry project a Rust SDK adapter, so that now bits and pieces of OpenTelemetry or wholesale telemetry processing pipelines can have a gateway into the Rust ecosystem. And they're looking also, not surprisingly, at data fusion and some of the core Legos from that set of projects. So I have a lot of optimism about the overall approach, and I wouldn't be surprised if it could help here as well.
Cool. Yeah,
by the way, the flight SQL junk, the implication of that is I can park stuff in object storage and have really for free fan out semantics, right at the data access layer for that. So that's the other. It's not just getting stuff in and out columnar instead of ODBC style, but that whole stack also supports out of the box sharded data sets and object storage quite well. So a lot of parallels between
I think,
all of this.
yeah, relevant, but also not relevant at the same time. I've started thinking about maybe seeing how, in the spirit of all things AI, seeing whether we can teach the ontology to a model and then make it do useful things like pass logs to come out with predicates. So give it a bunch of predicates from the ontology and make it say something. But it's all very experimental and floaty. But I think once I have some interesting results, I can share it with the group.
I would love to see it. I mean, both for CNCF, but also other foundations. Like, what if the foundation provided an AI bot for the maintainers of your project that could help answer questions about, well, all manner of things too. So yeah.
I do think there could be a lot of interesting things when it comes to, I think, log parsing. I just like, it's like new document formats, and just getting the information out without us having to like write a particular parser for a new document format. Now we are pretty much at time. This was a great discussion. All right.
Yeah,
I guess I'll
it's
see you
also
all
for
next
links
week.
to the Trustify stuff. This actually looks really interesting. I'm gonna read into it.
Please feel free to ping me if you have any questions around it. And it's written in Rust, yeah. So
I guess let's think about some community topics for next week. Unfortunately, I'm going to be out the entire of next week. But I will put some ideas in the meeting notes as well.